What attracted you to Comrades?
It was the script. It was quite unlike any film script I've ever read. There was no sense of narrative and pushing the story on. But there were this series of described in great detail, these images, you know, a droplet of rain running down a window and someone's face smiling. And it's kind of difficult to understand exactly what sort of film it would make. It was difficult to interpret it. But there was obviously something very special about it. And, you know, the depiction of the rural lives in Dorset at that time, it just had something kind of genuine about it.
I think for me it was the whole subject matter, not particularly her, it was the whole thing. I thought was, you know, a story well worth telling, and just to be part of that for me was the thing. And also she was quite a serious woman who supported her husband and who, you know, she wasn't one of those women saying, "What are you doing? Come on, don't make any trouble, don't make any trouble." That they believed that they were right and that they should, you know, work as hard as they could for the people. And also, as I said, you know, on a completely personal level, it was my first film, and I wanted to just be in a film that was, you know, going to be an important piece of work.
This wasn't a sort of job, it was more than a job. This is something that you put your heart and soul into because it mattered. These people's lives mattered, and this story was an important story to be told. I think George Lovelace is one of the great heroes of English history.
My films have all been sort of political in a sense, with a small p. And I like pictures about people, you know, and relationships, and that was what I thought was so wonderful in Comrades. The simplicity with which Bill described the various different family relationships.
And how did he prepare you as an actor then? You know,
in no way at all. I mean, it's the usual thing. You don't get much rehearsals for films, and we all slept down to Dorset. You know, put our rural gear on and got on with it.
In the casting process, he would choose actors not just to do the part, but he would choose actors because of how he related to them as people.
You know, I think he cast us as much as anything for the way we looked and the faces, and a certain sort of quality in the eye, as much as anything else, as much as any skills we had. So you had to sort of offer yourself up to him, really, and just go along with it.
He'd been an actor, of course. He was very quiet, he was very sensitive, conversational. I mean, actors loved him because he was not going to shout or push people about or be a martinet.
He was a great doer, Bill, you know, and also he wouldn't suffer fools, which is always a very attractive quality, I have to say, and knew what he wanted.
And also, you know, to some extent, we weren't discouraged from extemporising. We could make stuff up and all that.
One of his great things was not to do any fussy acting, because he didn't want anything to get in the way of the purity of the emotion that you were feeling at any particular time, which is actually, if you think about it, very truthful to life. We are very simple in life. Our emotions are very simple, and we always have very direct thoughts. And there is something about acty sort of acting which gets in the way of that and blurs it. So he loved that directness.
He was very clear about what he wanted. I never felt, oh, I don't know what he means, I don't know what, you know, because also I would always ask. If I didn't know, I'd ask. Right. And even if you had to tell me again, I'd say, I know I'm stupid, but just tell me again what you mean. And that was great. And as long as, I think with those people, as long as you're straight with them, they're straight with you.
And the other thing that he liked was, and this was his great credo, was not being rushed. Don't rush it. He would very often, even after he'd said it to me once, would come up and say, just before he said action, he would say, don't rush it, Robin, don't rush it. Remember, it's 1830, not 1980.
He hadn't read Stanislavski, as far as I know, and he wasn't giving you notes about motivation or anything. You'd ask him a question, and he'd just describe what the film would be. You know, there's a figure walking through the landscape, and then there's a thing scything through the grass as they cut the hay, and then there's a wide shot. And so you started to see the sequence in the way that and he didn't really answer your question of how to play it, but it gave you, an inkling, you know.
When a scene went well, he was absolutely ebullient and cock-a-hoop. I mean, he was so, and especially if it went emotionally well.
For me, he was a good teacher, which I think is always useful.
a straightforward reading of George is he is a good man.
Yes.
Almost through and through. Is that how Bill wanted to
Bill said to me right at the beginning, he said, "You love everybody, Robin." He said, I don't want you to be duplicitous in any way whatsoever. I want you to absolutely be trusting and faithful and, and to think the best of everybody. And that's the way he was. And I'm sure that is the way he was. And I'm sure that's what led to his transportation in the end, is the fact that he was over-trusting and didn't see traps that were laid for him by scheming politicians and men of power. Of course, Bill's notion is that in the end, with the hindsight of history, those qualities of being noble and trusting and faithful will endure. And there's that line that Squire Frampton has when George is sent off, that the way he looked at me, it's almost as if he had won. And that is Bill putting those words there, because of course that's his idea, that in the end, in this very hard life he had, and it was a grim upbringing, and he did have a struggle to make his films, but somehow that those good and noble qualities in mankind will survive the more grasping, greedy, avaricious, Machiavellian ways of mankind.
Betsy was a remarkably passive character, sort of completely supporting George's union activities, not really challenged it in any way at all. Is that how you discussed playing it, or is that how you wanted to play it?
Well, I think that's what was given to me. That's what the gig was, and there's no point in saying, well, surely she'd be doing this. No, that's what it is, and you invest it and you make that person believable. Just rather than it being an actor who hasn't got many lines, it's the character who, and also we're talking about, those years when women, maybe didn't speak up but just supported them. And I think she felt that he was right. And maybe if, on another day, on another story, she might have discussed things more with him. But I think on this one, she knew he was right.
Did you see him as a political filmmaker?
I don't know that I did, really. And I don't know that I saw it as an overtly political film in the end. It wasn't a call to arms or anything. It was just about injustice. An injustice that was so clear and manifest that something had to be done about it. I mean, obviously it's the thing that began the trade union movement, so there's a political aspect to it. But these men, these hard-working men, especially George, like Robin Soans played, this was an intelligent, cultured farm worker. Something of an oxymoron, I would have thought. But that's the truth of it. And it's easy to see them as something like animals grunting away in the fields when you're going past in your coach. But they had lives that were every bit as vivid, and they fell in love, and that's what I thought the film was doing, was opening up the lives of these men.
Because he'd planned for a very bright Australia and the weather was a little bit bad when he got to Australia, things started to get a little bit sticky, and Bill was kind of expected to improvise a bit more sometimes from day to day, but couldn't quite do that. Did Bill lack spontaneity as a director?
No, it wasn't that he lacked spontaneity. He knew what he wanted to achieve. And if it was raining, that wasn't what he wanted to see. He wanted to see what he wanted to see. He put up with mud, rain, slush and sleet in Dorset, but he had this vision of Australia as a place where it never rained, the sun was always shining and the skies were eternally blue. So when he saw clouds in these eternally blue skies, he would go, well, that's not what I want, we'll stop. And he had a view that kind of didn't quite fit with getting the schedule done necessarily, because he just wanted it to be the way he wanted it to be. As a producer responsible for the Australian shoot, I would have to say there were times I was going, oh dear, we're not going to get the schedule today, and we didn't get it yesterday either. So of course those are matters of concern, but I never thought that he lacked spontaneity.
I can picture him in Australia, trundling through the desert, looking this way and that way, trying to work out which way he was going to shoot this damnably difficult scene with two people passing in an empty landscape like two roads. I thought, how's he going to do that? Where's he going to put the camera and all that? And getting more and more upset, close to tears sometimes. Very emotional man. He couldn't hide it, you know, however he was feeling, it beamed out of him. If he was upset or angry, it just showed in every fibre of his being.
He couldn't lie. If he was feeling something, he couldn't disguise it. So, you know, there was nothing manipulative or devious about him, which is why, in a way, of course, the story of George Lovelace attracted him so much, because here's another man who couldn't hide anything and who was completely undevious.
He was just he was a very sweet man, you know, very sweet-natured man, actually, very, very gentle man. But when it came down to it, when you're actually there doing it, my God, then he was completely ruthless, which is actually another feature of a great director, in a way, that he was about getting what he wanted. And often it didn't quite go the way he wanted it. The vision was not, whatever was coming up was not quite how he had imagined it, you know. And so that always led to great difficulty.
So there's one day in Dorset, in Dorchester, when it says there's a mountain of earth on the side of the road. It's primitive earth road mending, you know, and there's a big pile of earth. And he just sort of walked up and said, "What's that molehill doing there?" And so Simon said, "Well, isn't that what you wanted, Bill? What? He said, "No," he said, "I want a mountain of earth." And Simon said, "Well, we're very short of time, Bill. Can't, you know, we really need to get a move on." He said, no, when I've got a mountain of earth, I shall start filming." And Simon chased him down the street and pinned him against the wall and called him a little Scottish shitcake or something. But Bill said, no, just read the script, Simon. Just see what it says. I'm not being over awkward, it's just what I want. And so more earth was put there, and then we got on with the scene.
I saw my role very quickly as helping Bill to realise his own vision. In other words, that's what I was there to do, and to do it somehow within the cost. I didn't manage that, because in fact we went significantly over.
I think Simon, you know, is a great producer, an admirable man. And I think with somebody else, it might have been very difficult for Bill to finish the film at all. I think Simon did a great deal to protect him and soak up some of the flack.
One of the best bits of it, when we came back to England and we had still got these little bits to do, one of them was we needed winter shots. We had deliberately planned to go to Australia, because he wanted all the seasons in the film, and then to come back in the winter in the UK and do some winter shots. So one day, Bill suddenly says, we were going back to Tyneham, which is where we built the village. He said, I need snow for this. And he told me famous stories about how he'd done snow in the trilogy, by getting, I think it was flour, but it was salt or flour or something. He'd just gone out and bought and sprinkled and made it look like, and it did indeed look really gold. But we were talking about a huge landscape. So I said to Bill, Bill, you know, we have to shoot it tomorrow. We can't sit around and wait for it maybe to snow. And amazingly, it did. It did. It was extraordinary that we woke up in the morning and it was actually snowing so hard we couldn't even get in to Tyneham to do the shot. And so that shot of Leg, you know, going away with his two children in the snow, I mean, that was how Bill saw it, and it just happened. I mean, incredible, you know. Whether he was in touch with somebody, I don't know, but it was wonderful.
He was a man of extraordinary talent. It was like he was born to be a filmmaker.